Perhaps the most commonly asked question about cruises over the last year or so is if or when the cruise lines will drop their vaccine mandates. Hey everyone, it's Matt from Cruise Blog, and today I wanted to talk about a topic that a lot of people have been asking about, and the answer has been always the same: we don't know, but I wanted to explain why we don't know, because essentially every major cruise line still requires that all adults be fully vaccinated to go on a cruise. Depending on the line, some lines have more stringent rules as it applies to boosters, vaccines for kids and whatnot, but there is still very much for adults a industry-wide requirement that you have a COVID-19 vaccine in order to go on a cruise. And I'm not here to talk about vaccines or COVID or the efficacy of any of these things. I'm here to talk about the why. Why are cruise lines still holding on, and why, more likely, we're not going to see this go away anytime soon. Now, if you're somebody who is not getting vaccinated, wants to go on a cruise, and is kind of upset about that, I'm not going to offer you any information that might make you feel better about it. I'm simply trying to explain where the cruise industry is coming from, because most often people that look at this say, listen, we're seeing a lot of the requirements as related to COVID erode around the world, right? Whether we're talking about airlines dropping mask mandates, whether we're talking about certain countries dropping all their COVID requirements in order to visit that country, it seems like it'd be natural for the cruise industry to follow suit. But the reality is the cruise industry is facing a double standard. They've been facing a double standard well before COVID-19. And what I mean by this is the cruise industry is looked at through a different lens compared to basically any other form of leisure travel that's out there. You have to remember, the cruise industry, for better or worse, and in my opinion worse, is synonymous with COVID-19 in a lot of situations because of the early outbreaks of COVID on board cruise ships in January of 2020. There were some very notable cases of COVID-19 aboard cruise ships in Asia in early 2020, and that has been basically the narrative, Exhibit A, in the case against going on cruise ships. And for the longest time, that has really just been the baseline for it. In fact, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, CDC, was using that data as really the impetus for their cruise ship ban for a really long time. Australia, which recently reopened their cruise industry just now, has also used that cases of COVID-19 in early 2020 as a basis for banning cruise ships. So this is the frame of reference the cruise industry is up against. Now, you're going to say, that's not fair. That's from 2020. This is 2 years later. Everything has changed. And I would agree with every single thing you said, but the optics have not. And the proof of that is if you look at any of the recent COVID cases being reported by mainstream news, even today, here in mid-2022. When there are COVID cases on a ship, usually what happens is there's more cases than normal, I would say, on a cruise ship, and people go to social media and, start posting about this. The news picks up on it and still highlights case counts, even though, as a society, we've largely moved away from case counts to look more at hospitalizations as it relates to the impact COVID-19 is having. But in my opinion, the cruise industry is still facing a double standard, meaning when there's COVID cases on land, people kind of shrug their shoulders and say, what are you going to do? But on cruise ships, it's still a major optic thing because, of course, on cruise ships, you pretty much know, although they could have caught COVID from other places like the airport, people are on a cruise ship, they're contained. It's very easy to isolate and say, those people have COVID, they're on a cruise ship. As opposed to if you catch COVID on land, did you catch it in the movie theater? Did you catch it at your kid's school? Did you catch it in the supermarket? You'll never really know, right? There's no way to definitively know about it. Whereas it's an easier narrative when you have cases on board cruise ships. On top of that, of course, the cruise ships report their cases to the CDC. So you actually have a federal agency offering COVID data. So that makes it a much easier story for the news to report on, and there you go. So all that being said, what should you know about the vaccine requirements as it relates to cruise ships? Bottom line is nothing's going to change anytime soon. I know it's not the answer you're looking for, and I know there's a lot of folks out there that are upset about that, but this is the reality that's here, not because the cruise industry is trying to isolate a certain segment of the population, not because people are just trying to hold on to different protocols for whatever reason. This is the reality, the optics of the industry, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of people who I'm sure are watching this say, I don't agree with this. This is awful. This is dumb. Whatever the rationale is, you have to remember this is an irrational argument against the cruise industry. This is what a lot of people look at cruises, and this is the old adage, cruise ships are petri dishes, which we know is a misnomer and a stereotype that's completely blatantly false. But because of the way it's reported on, this is the reality of the cruise industry. So I hope this video helped explain a little bit of this. I'm sure it's not going to make anybody feel better about it, but this is why the cruise industry still has the COVID-19 vaccine requirements and more than likely is not getting rid of them anytime soon. Hope you found this video at least a little bit insightful, maybe helpful to understand why it is. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel. It really would help us out if you could subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification bell so that way YouTube lets you know we have a brand new video. This has been Matt from Cruise.blog, and we'll talk again real soon.